Fireplaces did not heat homes well by accident. For centuries, folks living in cold climates understood a simple winter ventilation rule that, well, modern homes routinely violate. When folks followed this rule just right, fireplaces would burn hotter, draw cleaner, reduce smoke, and actually warm up the living spaces instead of just sending all that heat up the chimney. It also cut down on sickness, soot buildup, and how much fuel you had to use. This wasn't just some theory either. It was practiced knowledge, refined over time across medieval Europe, colonial America, and frontier homesteads, places where firewood was hard-earned labor, not just decoration. This rule wasn't about sealing up homes tight as a drum. It was really about controlling where air came in, how it moved around, and where it left. When you got that balance right, fireplaces worked just like they were supposed to. The rule was to always provide a controlled source of cold air near the fire. Historical builders understood that fire doesn't just pull air out of thin air. Every fire needs oxygen, and in winter, that oxygen had to come from outside. The mistake modern homes make is thinking that indoor air alone can feed a fire without any problems. Older homes never made that mistake. The rule was simple and folks just knew it. A fireplace must have a dedicated, predictable source of cold air coming into the room near the hearth. This air was always intentionally colder than the room air and came in right at floor level. By doing it this way, the fire drew combustion air straight from outside instead of stealing the already warmed air from the room. That's why older homes often had loose-fitting doors, leaky sill plates, or little vent gaps near the hearth. These weren't construction flaws, not at all. They were functional design choices. Cold air came in low, fed the fire, heated rapidly, and exited as hot exhaust through the chimney. The room stayed warmer because heated air stayed in the living space instead of being pulled out. The chimney only worked correctly when pressure stayed balanced. Fireplace performance depends on draft, and draft depends on pressure. Historic builders didn't use the word pressure, but they understood it by experience. If a room became too airtight, the chimney lost draft strength. Smoke backed up. Fires burned sluggishly. Carbon monoxide lingered. The winter ventilation rule prevented this by maintaining a pressure balance. Cold air entering low replaced hot air exiting high. The chimney stayed active, smoke rose cleanly, and the fire burned hotter with less wood. One of the great myths is that fireplaces were inefficient heaters by design. In reality, many fireplaces performed poorly only after modern retrofits changed airflow patterns. When fireplaces followed the winter ventilation rule, they heated spaces more effectively than many people realize. Because combustion air came from outside, warm indoor air stayed in the room longer. Heat radiated from masonry, iron firebacks, and thick hearths. In many homes, heat lingered for hours after the fire died down because walls and floors absorbed warmth instead of losing it to uncontrolled drafts. In colonial homes, fires were often smaller than people assume. They burned steadily, not roaring, because draft was consistent. Less wood was needed because combustion was complete. This rule reduced sickness and winter respiratory problems. Historical households noticed something modern builders often overlook. Poor winter airflow caused illness. Stagnant air mixed with smoke, dampness, and soot irritated lungs and weakened people during cold months. By allowing controlled ventilation near the fireplace, fresh air constantly entered the room, even in winter. Well, in English cottages, hearth vents were sometimes built directly into the stone near the fireplace. Over in Scandinavian homes, small floor-level vents allowed outside air to enter beneath benches or hearthstones. In early American homes, folks used loosely fitted floorboards near chimneys to serve the same function. Some homes even had ash pits beneath fireplaces that doubled as air channels, while others relied on leaky foundations intentionally left unsealed. So, this rule is still usable today if applied carefully. A fireplace just performs better when it has a known source of incoming air. That air, honestly, should enter low and close to the hearth. This can be as simple as cracking a nearby window just slightly during use. not across the room, but close to the fire. In cabins and older homes, allowing controlled leakage near the fireplace instead of sealing everything tight, well, it improves draft instantly. In grid-down or fuel-scarce situations, efficiency really matters. The winter ventilation rule lets you get more heat from less wood. It keeps chimneys cleaner, reduces creosote buildup, and lowers fire risk. Plus, it improves indoor air quality when ventilation systems are offline. Historic homes survived winters without insulation foam, plastic wraps, or powered fans because airflow was understood and respected. If you value real historical knowledge that still works under pressure, this is the kind of detail worth preserving. Fireplaces were not mistakes, y'all. They were part of a balanced system that modern habits disrupted. Understanding that system gives you options when convenience disappears. If this kind of content matters to you, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, share this with someone who still relies on wood heat, and keep these lessons alive. History only helps us if we remember how it actually worked.